Ciao, I hope you're having a great day. My name is Simone and I'm a professional photographer and videographer. And this crash course you'll learn how to bring your photos to the next level using Lightroom Classic. The class is divided in 3 main sections. In the first part, we'll understand and dive into the workspace, how to import and organize files, set our preferences, and select our photos. In the second part, you'll learn all the main editing tools within the software, how to utilize them to dramatically increase the look of your photos. We'll dive into composition, colors, lighting, local adjustments, details, and more. In the third part, I'll show you my editing process with loads of examples so you can learn how to apply all these tools together in various situations. The crash course is designed to learn all the main and most important Lightroom features. Keep in mind that when I'll show you my workflow, this is extremely personal and it's not necessarily the best, but it's just what works for me. So feel free to adapt anything that you'll hear to your needs. Are you ready to start? See you in the next video. Let's start by quickly overviewing Lightroom once you open it. The main tabs are on the top right corner and are called Library, Develop, Map, etc. Library and Develop are the one that you use the most. The other one, I personally never touched them, so we're not gonna really dive into it. And then whenever you need to import new images, you need to be here on Library. Lightroom is generally divided in 4 main sections: the left panel, the right panel, the center, and the bottom preview. While in the library, the left panel shows the navigator and the group options to retrieve your photos. On the right side, you have the quick develop option and keywording, etc., which allow to assign several options and organize in a very efficient way your photos. These tools are especially recommended for professional photographers who have massive hard drives, and therefore we're not gonna really dive into it deeply. On the center of this view, we have the photos that we have stored or imported already. This little menu at the bottom allows to modify the view from which you see these photos. So for example, if I click single photo, then I can move with my arrow keys left and right. Or if I want to see the full gallery of my folder selected, then I just need to click on this little button right here. And then at the bottom, in this little menu, you have all the preview of the photos. And then if you have more photos, you'll need to right click or left click on the arrow, or you can, if you have a trackpad, you can drag your fingers. And then we have the filter options, which allows you to filter the photos that you want to see here. Okay, now let's go in the next video and see how we can import the photos. In this video, we're going to see the importing process and the file organization within Lightroom. Remember that it's always best to import raw photos instead of JPG, as they contain more information and therefore more colors. So as I said, you need to be in Library and you have multiple options. The first one is to drag directly from the folder that you want into Lightroom, or you can go in File, Import Photos and Videos, and then you go and find the folder that you have the photos within. So for example, I have this one I put in my hard disk and within the Lightroom course, and then I have reference photos, which are the ones that I will show you during this crash course. And then you have the option to click on any photo that you don't want to import. Or what happens is that if these photos have been previously imported, then Lightroom will recognize them as duplicate and therefore won't import them during this time, because within Lightroom catalog you can import the photos basically once, and is made to save you space. And as you can see, it's also written there that it appears to be a duplicate. Okay, you can even check all or uncheck all, and then the main options that you have are here. So if you add the photos within Lightroom catalog, and will keep them in your hard drive as well. If you move, the photos will be moved to a new location and added to a catalog. And then you can choose your own location on this right panel. For example, if you want to create a new folder within the desktop with all the imported photos, you need to go here into a subfolder and pick this option, and then you write here, for example, you write like photos from London, And then what happens is that he's going to create a new folder within desktop called Photos from London and organized by date. Therefore, there will be a subfolder called 2021, and then the date format, you can pick it whatever you want. And then within the date, then you're going to have the subfolder Photos from London. The copy basically does the same thing, but then it copies the photo to a new location. So from where you import your photos from this folder right here, will copy into this one that you pick, while moving will remove from this and then move into there. Copy as a DNG, copy to a new location, import the photos and convert them into a DNG. DNG is a format that contains more information, so the file will be bigger. Let's say it's easier. It's kind of like a raw format. So for example, ARW is the Sony format, and then Canon has its own, but the DNG is kind of like everyone has it. In this case, what I want to do, I want to simply add, because the way how I import the photos is that I open my camera card and then I copy that photos into a folder that I pick without using the help of Lightroom. So in this case, I simply put all the photos into this folder, into the hard drive, and then I'm just going to add the photos into the Lightroom catalog in this way. And then Lightroom will import all the files right here, and then within library, I can go and quick develop and see some of the photos. For example, I double click on one and then I can increase the exposure a tiny bit to see if I may like without needing to go on the develop mode, which is the one that will allow all the main adjustments. So now let's understand how it works with catalogs and with collections. Lightroom recommends to use one catalog only, which is the mother basically of everything. You can use one catalog if you're a photographer and you want to use one catalog for personal, one catalog for weddings, and one catalog for travel. Let's say we're using the catalog personal, I have one only. And then you can go into collection, which are basically subfolders of that catalog. And then you can create a collection set, which is the mother of multiple single collections. So we go in collection and let's say we call it travel here. We untick this inside the collection set because this is a new one. And then we have the travel folder. And then we go and select from our previous import the photos that we want to choose. For example, I choose these four from Hong Kong, and then I go in collection, create a collection, and then I call it Hong Kong. And then inside a collection set, which is the travel. And then I include the selected photos, create. And then within the travel, you can see that the Hong Kong folders popped up, and you can do this with all your photos. Each person organizes its photos differently, but just for the sake of understanding how this works, if you travel to Italy, you can call the connection set Italy and have other mini albums and call them portraits, architecture, landscape. This is totally up to you. Now, within each collection set, you can create smart collections like this one. And smart collections are automatic group of photos given certain rules. Are based on common data such as 5 stars or recently added and more. Whenever you want to create a smart collection, you can pick the rules that it should follow. For example, if we want to create a smart collection, then you need to call it whatever you want, portraits, for example, 5 stars photos, and then you need to set the rule here. So for example, this is the first rule, and then we say rating, and then it's greater or equal than 5 stars. So Lightroom will create a smart collection with all the photos that have 5 stars. Right now it's 0 because there are no 5 stars. But let's go here, for example, and give to this photo number 5. So this will add a rating of 5 stars right here. And then we can move here, and then we can move here. And these 3 photos will be automatically added to the smart collection of the 3 stars. As you can see, these are the 3 photos within the smart collection of 5 stars. Now you can add a lot of different rules, and I leave it to you to explore the smart collection, as there are a lot of possibilities within. For example, if you have a label text, if you have a smart preview, what kind of source you have, the date, camera info, the size, the colors, and all these things. And you can even multiply them by adding more rules and then pick and create selections that you prefer. If you want also, you can untick the inside collection set if you want to put a smart collection within the travel collection set that we created before, and so on and so forth. As I mentioned, I don't use much these collection tools. I really like just to put my photos in the folders, and then I know with the name, I organize usually in files per year. So in 2020, I know that I went to Hawaii, I went to there, I went to here, I went to Hong Kong and all these things. So I just like to have the names. As you can see here, I have some previously imported photos that are in my other hard drive, and I know by name. Now this is completely personal. I know that a lot of people simply use the date to organize their files. This is totally up to you. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. As in every software, you can modify the preferences based on your liking. So we just need to go to Lightroom, Preferences, and then here there are a bunch of options that you can pick. I never really touched anything. The only thing that I want to show you is this one in file handling. So whenever you're copying as a DNG, as we said before, when you import, you can pick the size of the JPEG preview of the photos that you're going to see in Lightroom. And then one thing that I wanted to add is that here, when you go to Lightroom's classic, basically options, you can click on edit watermark. So if you want to export your photos with a watermark, you write here the text that you want. Here is my name. And then you can pick the opacity, the offset, the radius, and here there are all the options for editing the watermark effects and style graphics and everything like that. You can also pick your own logo by choosing the image that you prefer, and you can pick text, graphic, and all these things. Now I will show you towards the end of the course on how you can add while exporting photos. Okay, this was a quick one. I'll see you in the next one. In this video, we go into the exciting part, develop mode. So here we are in library, and then you just need to click on develop, and it will show you the photos that you've selected. And then in the bottom here, you have the preview of all the photos. This is the main window in Lightroom that allows to edit your photos. On the left side, we have the navigator, same as the library mode, and useful to control the zoom of the photo and the preview of our presets whenever you're using them. The two main options are fit and fill. Fit will allow to see all the photo within the central workspace, while if you click on fill, then it will remove these gray parts and fill up the Lightroom space. Now keep in mind that I barely use this just because I like to use shortcuts for zooming in and zooming out, especially because it will happen very, very often that you're going to do so. If you have a trackpad, the best way is to pinch in and pinch out. If not, you can use Command plus or Control plus on Windows and Command minus to zoom in and zoom out. Remember this because it will save you an incredible amount of time. On the bottom, as I already mentioned, you can find the presets. What is a preset is basically a set of settings and colors that you can import from other creators or you can create on your own. This will save you a lot of time, and they allow to have consistency in your photos, and later in the course we'll see how to create new presets and how we can import presets from external sources. On the bottom we find the classic sequence of photos that you have in the folder that you're editing the photos in based on the filter that you utilized here on the right, as I've just shown you before. Then you have the options to control the second screen right here. For example, now that I'm having two screens, I can select it and see what's happening in the other screen. And then you can just customize your own options. Keep in mind that whenever you want, you can select multiple photos by holding the Command option or Control if you're in Windows, and then click on the photos like in all the programs and software. In the different views, you have the option to use the reference view, for example here. So you drag and drop the photo that you want to keep as a reference photo. For example, if you need to match the colors of another picture, and then you can modify just the right photos. You have the before and after option, both in horizontal, and then you have different type of views. For example, this one is the split, or here's the top bottom, and then the top bottom split. Even when you have the reference view, you have left, right, or top bottom, and then you can just go back to normal. Whenever you're in a photo, you can right click on that photo and create a virtual copy. This is useful because you can edit the same photo in two different ways and saving both copies. So in this case, you have a virtual copy where I can put everything in yellow, but then the other one is not affected even though it's a virtual copy. And this one I can put all the blue, so I can pick the one that I prefer the most with different edit. If you want to change this gray background in Lightroom, you can just right click and pick the one you prefer. This is useful if you need to edit a photo based on a future outcome. For example, if you need to have a white advertising background or whatever you want, this is useful. On this little arrow on the right, you can pick what to see on this bar right here. For example, if I want to add the slideshow, if I want to see the color label, if I want to see the rating in these photos, I deselected the flagging which was on before, and I want to see maybe the grid overlay. So for example, here I can modify the grid that I'm seeing. If I want to keep it, this really depends and it's up to you what you want to use. Okay, and then we have the right panel. On the top here we have the histogram, where we can basically see the left side represents the shadows, and then here on very close to the edge you have the blacks, and then you have the exposure here in the midtones, highlights and whites here. So if you want, even here you can tap and adjust the part that you're holding, then it's become highlighted, and then just drag into the right to the left if you want to use the slider, which is the same exactly thing as using these sliders that we are seeing, that we're looking afterwards. For example, if you have a look, this is the exposure, so it's dragging the whole exposure up, or here is moving even the shadows on the slider below. This arrow right here basically shows when you lose details, whether you're looking at the shadows or the highlights. For example, right now I click it and I see that in this basically small red dots, there are no details. The highlights are burned. If I move the exposure all the way up, more parts will be burned and therefore will become red. And Lightroom basically tells you, hey, be careful because this part you lost all the details, it's completely white. Then we have the local adjustments. Here we have the crop and straighten tool. Here's spot removal, red eye, filters, and then we have the basic adjustments, color, black and white. So if you want to see your photo directly in black and white, you just need to click here. And then if you want to remove the option that we set before, hide highlight clipping, you just need to click here and you're good. And the same thing you can do here with the shadows. So you're going to see where the shadows elements are lost. So as you can see, it becomes blue where it's completely pitch black. So there's no detail here in these parts. So here we have all the main sliders. We got the tone curve, the HSL and colors, color grading, details, lens correction, transforming, all the things. Keep in mind that whenever we make some adjustments in this panel, for example, here, let's just put it like this, you can click on these two rectangles right here to deselect all the panel. So you won't see anymore the change that you made using, for example, in this case, the tone curve. And then we activate it again, and then it goes back to the edit that we picked. This tone curve is fully manual, or otherwise you can pick the parametric curve, where you basically have the possibility to increase kind of custom curve. So you go in highlights, midtones, and this helps you if you don't want to do it manually. You can also pick these points and select where the curve is curving, and then you can increase even using the slider or simply drag up and down. So if you want to use the manual, you can just click on the curve and then creates a new point and will adapt based on where you drag it. Then we have the HSL and colors. We have two different modes. If you click on HSL, you will see all the saturation colors here, and then you go in luminance and all the colors are in one tab, or if you go in color, you pick one color and then you see hue, saturation and luminance here. Color grading allows to assign to shadows, midtones and highlights certain colors. For example, if I want to put all the shadows blue, I drag it here and I move it towards the blue, and as you can see, the shadows here became blue. The shadows are the dark part of the image. And then we have the detail tab, where you can increase or decrease the sharpening and the noise reduction. Be careful about these because it's pretty heavy, so make sure to do it last. Then we have the lens correction. For example, this has been shot on a Sony 55mm f1.8. Lightroom automatically detects the lens and then will decrease or increase the distortion vignetting based on certain parameters. But if you want, you can modify these parameters and decrease or increase the distortion and vignetting yourself. And then we have the transform panel, super useful in architecture, where you can basically move vertically, horizontally, the image, the aspect and the rotation. And then you have the panels that allow you to control these things automatically. Then you have effects where you can create vignetting. Okay, let's remove the shadows right here and the highlights as well. And then if you go on the right, you create white vignetting, and if you go on the left, you go on black vignetting. Then you can add grain for vintage effect, and then we have the last one, which is calibration, and this is probably the most difficult yet powerful tab inside Lightroom. To make it easy to understand, the calibration is how you tell Lightroom to interpret the primary colors RGB, red, green, and blue. Changing these values differs from changing the values in the HSL panel because they affect the overall definition of RGB. Changing blues in the HSL panel will target areas of the image that appears blue, whereas changing blue in the camera calibration panel will affect all the pixels that contain blue in their mix. This will change the color cast that shadows have with green and magenta cancelling each other out. Every camera lens manufacturer has its own calibration, and this is why sometimes you hear that some cameras have better skin colors calibration, but that's not a big deal. Final buttons right here are previews and reset. Reset when you want to completely reset all the adjustments that you made and go back to the original image. Okay, this is all for the develop menu. I'll wait you in the next lesson when we are talking about editing composition. First thing that we need to do when we import the photos and we start editing is making sure that the composition is right. Before cropping the image, I always check the perspective. First thing to do is to enable the profile correction that I showed you before. So usually Lightroom automatically detects the lens that you used, otherwise you can select it manually and you can use the slider to increase or decrease the distortion and vignetting. Especially while shooting architecture or urban or even in other photos, we need to use the transform tool. There are some automatic buttons right here. The auto tool works very well and does everything for you. It's a very quick tool, but not always perfect. So let's see, in this case, yeah, it worked very well. The level tool will automatically adjust your horizontal lines, while the vertical tool analyzes and then adjusts the vertical lines within your photos. The full adjustments option takes into account all vertical and horizontal lines plus the feature of the auto options. Many times this tool just doesn't work, but you can try. For example, in this case, let's see what happens. Yeah, I kind of like it, but I would prefer the Ultra tool, which is basically starting the photos much more central and it's just better for me. Guided tool, top right corner, and probably the best option is basically a guided manual mode. The tool is straightforward to use. Just choose the line that you wish to adjust. For example, right here, let's go. And then we go a little bit down the line and select the right part. And then we go and select the horizon right now. So we go, for example, here, and then we go on this part of the tool. There you go. And this will make it automatically, and this looks pretty good, right? So once you selected the two lines, Lightroom will automatically adjust your image based on your guidelines, the vertical and the horizontal line. Okay, click done, press it. If this doesn't work, you can use the manual sliders, which are vertical option, horizontal, rotation, aspect, then scaling, X offset and Y offset. So for example, if I want to adjust this one manually, I can rotate a tiny bit, move the offset tiny bit, then we do constraint crop, so it will remove automatically all the white areas that you create while you use the transform tool. Okay, let's click auto because I really liked this, and then we go back into the crop and straighten tool at the top. Drag the corners and make it free, or I can hold shift and make it proportionate. Or if you don't want to use it manually, you can click the auto button and we'll do it automatically. Now we fixed it already with the transfer, so it did nothing. Or if you want, you can adjust even the angle using the slider, or even in this case, you can simply use this ruler. So you need to pick a line. Let's pick here. It's less precise than what we used before, but it's still a viable option. There you go, click OK. And even here, let's go back. You can pick the format that you prefer. So if you want to post it on IG, the feed vertical format is 4:5 or 5:7. Or if you want to post stories, this is 16:9. There you go. Now, if you want to transform it from vertical to horizontal or from horizontal to vertical, you need to drag this button holding shift, and then at a certain point Lightroom will switch it automatically, and then you hold it and then this is cropped. This lock right here allows you to keep the proportionate dimensions on or off. So if this is unlocked, then this is manual, or you can keep shift down and make it proportionate, or you can lock it directly and then you just move it without holding shift, and this is not free anymore. If you want, you can also customize the grid by going into tools and then crop guide overlay, and then you pick the one you prefer. Or you can click O and change between them and pick the one that you like the most based on the composition that you're building. But typically, let's stick with the rule of thirds, as is the most used. The image is divided evenly into thirds, both horizontally and vertically. According to the rule, the subject of the image is placed at the intersection of those dividing lines or along themselves. The rule is widely used to divide the background as well. For example, when we have a photo at the beach, or in this case with some grass and some sky, there is 1/3 of the sky and maybe 1/3 of something else and 1/3 of the grass. Or you can have 2/3 of the grass, like in this case, and 1/3 of the sky. So keep in mind the rule of third every time you crop a picture. For example, this one looks okay, but we can make it much better if we increase, for example, this part and then right here. So what happens is that we are targeting to have 1/3 of the sky, 1/3 of the beach, plus the ocean, and then 1/3 of the grass, with the subject within the intersection of the grid. We crop it like this, and then we click auto to adjust the horizon, and then we're good to go. Perfect composition. Then we can go into the colors. Another option that you have is that whenever you select the crop, is that you can just draw on the part that you want. Keep in mind that if you're working on a raw photo like this one, and we see the format right here, which is ARW, or if you have a DNG, which are big files, you can crop quite a lot before starting seeing room on pixels. While if you're working on a smaller images like JPGs, then I suggest to avoid cropping too much the pixel, otherwise the rumor will come up. Another rule that I want to mention whenever you're editing the composition is read room or read space. And according to this rule, we need to let the space in front and in the direction of the moving or stationary subjects, while composed shots leave space in the direction of the subject that is facing or moving. For example, in this case that I'm sitting right here on the grass, I'm facing this direction, and therefore here there is the space of the picture. If we would crop the picture in this way, this wouldn't look good. The reason why it wouldn't look good is because I'm facing towards this part, but this part is the end of the image and the space is behind. This happens when you're moving, or when you're looking, or whenever you're doing something dynamic or even stationary. For example, in this picture, I'm moving towards the right of the picture, and therefore the space should be on the right of the picture. So editing like this would be a mistake, because I'm moving towards this direction, and there is no space. So even here, when we look at this image, it's not really perfect because this part is not 1/3, but it's slightly more. I'm not on the left line. So if we want to crop the picture in the best way, we can just drag this part. There you go. And this is it. So we have one part of the pavement, one part of the cathedral, and one part of the sky with the subject moving towards empty space and staying on the left line of the rule of third grid. Let's have one last example in this picture so you better understand this concept. We go and we try to put the subjects on the right line of the rule of thirds, and then we have one part of this terrain, then one part of this lighter terrain, and then one part of trees and sky, with the subject in the middle of the intersection. And this is a good composition. Now keep in mind that whenever you change the format of the composition, then of course you need to check it back. In this case, for example, if you want to do on Instagram 1 by 1, then is more of a problem, and I might need to maybe go down a tiny bit, eliminate the sky so I can keep myself in the intersection and can keep 1/3, and kind of 1/3. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. I'm going to wait you in the next one where we're going to talk about colors and lighting. Ciao! Okay, welcome in the editing part 2 when we're going to talk about colors and lighting. This is a crucial part of the editing process. Keep in mind that in reality, when you edit a photo, the process is never linear. So you're going back and forth between adjustments until you find the perfect settings for that picture that you're editing. And also keep in mind that in higher productions, there is a colorist dedicated only to this function. Mastering colors is something extremely difficult, and it takes a lot of practice as you need to train your eye. The first thing that you want to do is adjusting the white balance. This means that the objects which appear white in person should be white in your photo. You can do this in 2 ways. First one is you can pick the color picker and you go in the white of your photos and you click on it, and this will adjust automatically the temperature and the tint. Otherwise, if this doesn't work, or if you don't have any real white objects, then you can drag manually the slider. If you go on the right with the temperature, the color will be more warm, more towards the yellow, while if you go on the left, will be more winter, cold tones. And then you adjust the tint, so you can go magenta or green based also on your liking. Let's go with like that. And remember that if you want, you can just go in black and white photos if you're editing like portraits that you know they're going to be black and white. But let's keep it 2 colors right now. Now we start touching the lights. Consider that the luminance in a picture goes from 0 to 100. 0 means completely black and 100 completely white. At 0, at 100, we lose details. Our goal is to keep the whole image within this range if possible, unless we're looking for special effects. We need to target to have the highest highlight in the photo close to 100, while the darkest shadow close to 0. We can start by adjusting the exposure, which affects the overall image. So for example, in this photo, I want to decrease a bit. Now, here in this photo, this is completely burned. As we can see also on the histogram right here, this is touching basically the right edge, which means we're losing all the details. And even if I touch this, I see all the lost details in the image. However, I really like the kind of vibes in this photo. So in this case, it's fine. Then you can, after you've adjusted exposure, you can touch the highlights, the shadows, the whites, all the black, based on what you're looking for exactly in the picture. So if you bring down the highlights in this case, it will recover a tiny bit of details in this part, and then we can increase the shadows if you want to show more, or decrease them if you want to create more contrast, and then the whites and black. So what is the difference between highlights and whites? Highlights control a slimmer range of tonal values than do the whites. And absolutely key to understand here is that the highlight slider will not adjust the white point in the image. Only the white slider will do that. Seems similar, but you can keep pressing Alt or Option on a Mac, and then you can slide the sliders and see what are the parts affected by the image. So you can be more precise while editing. Now that you've adjusted the lighting, we can go on the next tab, which is Presence, and you have texture, clarity, dehaze, vibrance, and saturation. Texture, when you slide right to increase the texture, it can be great for enhancing small details like grains of sand, leaves on trees, and the edge of windows on buildings. It's a great tool for smoothing skin as well when used this way, and I will show you later how to do it. Clarity has the effect of increasing larger details than those affected by texture, which means that it's still very complementary through the new texture slider, which has been introduced recently by Lightroom. One does not replace the other. It has a larger effect on edge sharpness, which often causes unwanted halos, such as when darkened foreground elements like trees and buildings touch a bright sky. For example, in this case, when we bump up the clarity like crazy, we go here and you see that kind of white area right here that it just looks not professional. So be very careful when using this tool. And usually tends to wash out bright colors quite a bit in small details, and it can push the shadows strongly towards the black, and it can increase the noise in smooth areas under many conditions. So different from texture, and I always play around with both of them. Be very careful when using this. Now the last element is dehaze, and either add or remove atmospheric haze from a photo. If you have a photo with some low-lying fog in the picture like this one that is running and that is ruining the detail in the background, a lot can be removed by using the dehaze slider. So let's have a look how it works in this picture. You can see that bring up a little bit of detail and remove that haze. And then if we go on the other side, just increase that haze. For example, even in this picture, when we increase the haze, as you can see, we bring back some details on the part of the city that was affected by that. And then at the same time, if we go on the other side of the slider, then we'll bring in some haze. Extremely dangerous. Most of the time, beginners tend to overuse these last tools that I show you. So use them very, very carefully and try to use only local adjustments instead of the overall picture. So after in the course, we're going to see how to use radio filter, graduated filters, and try to use these tools only in certain parts of the image and not overall, unless you want to create certain type of effects. But never, 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 never use the sliders and just drag them all the way towards it. Maybe you'll have the idea and the concept that it might look good all the way, the clarity, because you see that punchy edges, that contrast that is popping out. But professional photographers would never use sliders all towards the end, or like a lot of clarity, a lot of texture, a lot of dehaze. So be very careful with this. Next up, we have vibrance and saturation. What is the difference between the two? Is that saturation affects all the colors in a picture evenly. Vibrance affects first highly saturated portions of the scene, and it usually focuses more on midtones. Then we have the tone curve. At the bottom, we have the shadows. At the top, the highlights, and in the middle, midtones. The parametric curve selecting this button right here is already fixed and works like a guide. So it's pretty easy. If you want to increase the midtone, you just grab the middle of the curve and then you drag it up or down. If you want to decrease the shadows or increase the shadows, down or up, and keep going. These are focus point, so you can move them, and in this case, the curve will select that point that is matching this one. There you go. I rarely use this one as it doesn't allow full control, but I prefer to use the point curve, where by clicking on the curve, you can set a point and then modify that curve, that portion of the curve that you picked. And by right clicking, you can delay that control point, or maybe you can add more, and so on and so forth. If you want to create the fade effect that you might see in many pictures, what you have to do is basically increase the black point. So here is completely black and here is completely white. So if we drag up this black, then the black won't be black anymore, but will be gray. So in this case, you see that this is not black anymore, but it's more gray. And then if you want, you can drag down this part and then you create the fade effect. So this is black, this is not black anymore. Let's see another example. Like in this photo, if you want, we can create 3 points right here, and then we increase the black. And as you can see, this kind of the fade professional looking that you see sometimes. Even with this effect, be very careful, don't overuse it. And if we have a look at the same curve and when we increase, notice the histogram on the top, what happens when I drag it up. So The shadows that's supposed to be black at 0 is not 0 anymore because it's not black anymore, but has become gray, so has increased from 0 towards another number. One of the classic things that you can do is to use the point curve, do 1 point on the shadows, 1 point on the midtones, and 1 point on the highlights, and then you do the S curve to increase a little bit the contrast of your image. There you go, you drag up the highlights and you drag down the shadows. And you can do the same thing with the RGB curves. So in this case, if we do 3 points, here the shadows, if we drag down the shadows, we will remove the reds and increase the greens in the photo, in the shadows only. Same thing, let's take another one. What you want to do here, you create 3 different dots, and then if you want to decrease the magenta colors in the highlights and therefore increase the green colors, you just drag them down, and then as you can see, the magenta highlights are increasing. Same thing with blue. If we want to make 3 different points on the turn curve and we want to increase the blue in the midtones within the picture, then you increase the midtones, and then you can see the photos becoming more blue. At the same time, if you want to remove blue and add yellow in the shadows, you pick the shadow point and you drag it towards the yellow. This is becoming much more yellow and less blue. You can also pick some presets. So if you go on the point curve, here linear, you have medium contrast and strong contrast, as you can see, and we'll do very much the same thing that we did before manually, but this is just a guide that does it for you. We go in my favorite part, which is the tweaking the colors, where your images basically become live. You can use either the HSL or the color. I prefer using the colors. Most of this part is literally try to play around with the sliders and see what looks good in the picture. Very important note, the skin colors are always orange. If you have a person, you never touch the orange hue, because as you can see right now, I'm becoming completely pink, or on the other side, I'm becoming like Hulk, completely green, yellow. Always, always, always skin color on the orange. Be careful when you use the orange sliders if you have people within. I usually start modifying the blues. What I do, I go in the blue and then I drag the blue towards lighter colors. There you go. And then you can decrease the saturation, then maybe increase the luminance. There you go. And then you go in the aqua colors and you can see how it affects the image. There are not many aqua colors right here, okay? Then we go maybe in the orange because there are no people, so I'm allowed to touch it. And let's see if there's any orange. Okay, there's no orange, that means there are a lot of yellow on that part of the image, and we can maybe decrease it towards that part. If you want to decrease the saturation or increase the saturation, that's totally up to you based on what you like. And there you go. These is already looking pretty nice before and after just touching these colors. Generally keep in mind that you rarely increase the saturation of the colors, but you always kind of decrease to have that dramatic look. But it really depends on the style that you are looking for. So when you want to edit the photos, first, usually I start with the blue, and especially in this case because there were a lot of blues, but then the main thing is to start with the most popular colors in the picture. In this case, we have the blue and the green, so I start from the greens and maybe I go towards the yellow, and then I desaturate them because I like that, and then I desaturate them a little bit. There you go. Play around with the luminance, okay, and then you go with the blue, again towards more the aqua, and then desaturate them. This is already much better than before, in my opinion, with 2 small adjustments. Among the most popular things that I do is here to adjust the blue and the green towards the yellow, and usually the yellow towards the orange. This is because complementary colors like blue and yellow and orange, they look good together. So whenever I select aqua, it's always good to have a kind of orangey look of the grass instead of having a pure green, which I don't like at all. This will create more dramatic looking effect in the picture. And then we have the next section, which is the color grading, and this allows you to control highlights, shadows, midtone, individual colors. In this case, it's useful to keep in mind the complementary colors like in this image. One clear example is pushing the shadows towards a teal color, like so, and the highlights towards the orange. like so. And then you do that teal and orange effect. Let's have a look at another picture, maybe this one. Put teal, there you go, and then orange, there you go. More teal and orange, and then you increase the saturation of this single setting right there. As you can see, this part of the image is becoming more teal and less teal based on this slider. Then you can blend it a little bit more, blend it less, and use the balance to increase how much the highlights or the shadows are affecting the picture itself. And then we go for the colors. We go in the last part, which is the calibration tab. Consider each color as a sum of colors. Despite you see the oranges as oranges, maybe they contain a little percentage of blues. So when touch this calibration, we affect each color not by the appearance, but by the composition. When we touch the blue and we move it towards the teal, for example, like so, each color that contains even a bit of blue will be affected. That part of blue will be more teal and eventually more or less saturated based on the second slider, like so. In this section, you can really apply your personal touch and feelings to the picture. And even here, the majority of the times is about trial and error. For example, let me show you the photo of this squirrel. This is a raw photo, and let me show you what happens when I drag the primary reds towards the orange, like so, and the blue primary towards the teal, like so. Boom. Completely changed the image. I was not selecting any parts, but the composition of the red and blues was affected, and therefore it affected the overall colors of the image. And even here we can call it kind of teal and orange looking. Then we can increase or decrease the saturation. Be very careful with this. Never increase too much, and maybe decrease like so. And then you can see how it affects also the green. So in this case, there is no green right in the picture, but then when I touch the green primary slider, then the photo will be affected anyway, because probably these colors are a sum of other colors containing also greens. For example, even in this photo with the parrot, because the parrot is green, when we go and select the green, we can literally change the color of the parrot. And also this can be done as well by using the color slider. So we go in the green or the yellow, maybe we need to check, and then we can let the parrot become whatever color kind of we want. And then here you can change the color maybe of the background, there you go. If you want a parrot that is too bright, or for example, because this subject is green and we want to increase the visibility of the subject, we can increase the luminance of the parrot. And this will affect all the greens because we're touching the greens. Or if we go back to the calibration, we can modify even the color of everything that is around. Let's see what happens. This case, even the parrot changed it completely color. Here is literally about playing around with the colors and go with the look that you like the most with trial and error. Okay, now we are ready to talk about local adjustments, which is probably the most powerful tool within Lightroom. In this video, we're going to dive into local adjustments, which for me are the most powerful tool within Lightroom. You can find all the local adjustments in Lightroom here on the top right, and they can be used to personalize the look of your pictures, enhance details, and create interesting compositions. The first element that I want to show you is the spot removal. This is a powerful tool that is used to eliminate unwanted elements in a picture. It can be used to remove people from an image or imperfections from your face. Once you click it, there will be a brush size, feather, opacity, and clone or heal. You can use the option clone, which copies another part of the image, or heal, which analyzes the part that you want to correct with the elements and colors around it. Sometimes it doesn't really work, so usually I try them both and then see which one works best. So in this case, I'm zooming in the picture, and then with my trackpad, I can drag my fingers up to increase the size or drag my finger down to decrease. If you don't have a trackpad, you can use the size slider, increase or decrease, and the feather. As you can see, the outer circle is basically the feather, while the inner circle will be affected whole. And then you can increase or decrease the opacity. That will increase or decrease the effect of the spot removal on the spot. So here, for example, everything that you need to do using heal is just select a brush that is big enough to cover all the people, and then you click it. And then now, because the opacity is not 100%, then you'll see the people below. But if I increase the opacity, there you go, they will disappear. And then here you can even modify more or less feather. Now, if you put too much feather, as you can see, you still see a little bit of the people. So in this case, we need to decrease the feather and leave it like so. Sounds perfect. Okay, we can remove even these objects. Just click it, and then Lightroom will pick automatically a part of the image that can be used to heal the part that you clicked on. If you don't like this part of the image, you can hold and drag to another part of the image that you think will work better. There you go. Let's do another example here. We can zoom into the picture, pick this person, tack, then it's gone. Super easy, right? If we go and we tap clone, more or less the same effect. So we just click on the person that we want to remove, and there you go. Person is completely gone. Can't see anything. Now let's try with this couple right here on the beach. To spot removal, boom, and this is gone. Now, as you can see here, it's not really perfect. So what you can try to do is you drag the part that Lightroom chose and then take it here. There you go. So you can see also the foam of the sea. And this looks perfect, right? So this is for removing people, and then it can be used eventually to remove also this imperfection in the picture. So there you go. And then there you go. There you go. Done. And here you can go ahead and clean all this part. Once you deselect the spot removal, all these points will disappear. But if you want to go back or change something, you can always click on the spot removal, and then these will pop up again, all the spot that you clicked before. If you want to remember how was the picture before you used this tool, you can turn off spot removal in this double rectangle right here. Basically, you disable the spot removal that you used, on and off. Now let me give you another example, removing some imperfection of the skin. Okay, let's have a look at this picture. Now, my friend's face, there are some pimples that can be removed. Now, this picture is not perfect, but just for the sake of understanding, you can use both clone or heal. Then you go very close to the pimple, so you make it perfect. And there you go, and you drag to the part of the skin that for you looks better. And then tack. There you go, and then you keep going for basically the whole face. And now, if you click done, we go before and after. Super easy, right? Okay, now we are going to talk about the next local adjustments, and the first one is the graduated filter. There are two options here. When you click it, you can either start with some adjustments already, and for example, right now, if I bump up the exposure and then I press and drag to create a graduated filter, this will apply already what I adjusted before, or I can also dynamically change. So whenever the filter is applied already, I can move the slider, which will affect only this part. Or if you want to see the affected area, you can tick this box, show selected mask overlay, which is toggled also by O. So you can click O on the keyboard and you toggle in, toggle out. There you go, like this. Okay, I like to keep it off and maybe use the adjustments to see what is happening for real. Now you can rotate a graduated filter by going in the middle line, keep pressing, and then drag to rotate your filter. You can diminish the feather by dragging the last line over here and diminish right there. There you go. Now there's no feather. Click done, and then if you see there's no feather over here. While if you want to increase the feather, of course, it's exactly the opposite. You select the filter that you want to increase. Now we need to zoom in, as I made it too small. There you go. There you go, and now is increased. So basically, until this point, until the first line, the filter is 100% working. And then from this line up to this line, the filter is feathering away. The center line recognizes basically the 50%. So here is 50% on, and then here is 50% off until you touch this point where the filter disappears basically. You can anytime move the filter by dragging the center and move it wherever you want. Also, you can double click on Effect here to remove all these adjustments from the filter. So basically you reset the filter. There you go. So for example, we're here, we made a lot of adjustments, blah, 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 but then I don't like this filter anymore, but I like the position. I just double click here and all go to 0. Whenever you have a filter selected, you can click new and then you'll be able to create a new filter. Or whenever you have a selected filter, you can click brush and then you'll be able to either increase the area that the filter affects or even remove the area that the filter is affecting. So whenever we click brush, you can paint on top of the areas that you want to affect, same as the filter, and then when you go and move the filter, the area will basically stay the same. But this area that I painted is having the same effect as this one, and as I increase or decrease the exposure, as you can see, the area that we painted is affected evenly. At the same time, what you can do with the brush, you can click on erase and then delete the areas that you don't want to see. And then you can also cancel on the filter itself, like so, if you have the erase here selected. And with both the brush and the erase, you can modify the size, the feather, and the flow, which is basically how hard it's going to cancel or paint on the area. So for example, if my flow is very, very low and I use the erase to cancel this part, it won't cancel evenly, but will be a tiny bit, tiny bit, tiny bit. Well, if I increase the flow, as you can see here, will cancel the selection harder, harder and harder and harder. And if I want, I can even draw more, and the flow will increase basically the effect of the brush or the erase. Whenever we have a graduated filter, we can use the hue to change the color of the affected area. So for example, right now, I can move this one and change the color of the grass, as you can see. If you click the fine adjustments, this slider will move much, much slower than what was before. So literally to fine adjust your colors. All the filters have already some built-in presets. For example, you go here and then you can pick what you have already. It's like burn, dodge, iris, enhance, soften skin, teeth whitening. But we're gonna have a look at this when we use the radial filter afterwards. And then the last thing that I'm showing you in this menu is the range mask. So let's create a new graduated filter that is affecting all this area. And then when we scroll down in this tab, we have the range mask, which is off, set as default, but then we can change it to color or luminance. Let's click luminance. Basically here, you pick the part of the luminance that you want to affect. For example, if I want to affect only the highlights, I need to remove the shadows from being affected right here. And as you can see, the mask is not present here anymore where there are shadows, but is only present where there are the highlights right there. Or at the same time, if I want to do the opposite, I keep the shadows down and then I decrease the highlights right here. And as you can see, these highlights, they're not affected anymore, but they're affected only the shadows on the cow. And you can increase the smoothness of this transition. At the same time, we can use color. So what we're going to say to the mask is, using the color picker, we're going to select and tell the mask, okay, affect only these colors within the rectangle. So in this case, because the color selector are the cow here, the skin of the cow, then the sky is not affected and the grass is not affected. You can shift and then click to create even multiple colors to be affected by the mask. There you go. So now that I selected the blue of the sky, the mask is affecting both the skin of the cow and the sky as well. Now, one of the main use of this graduated filter is to kind of draw the attention to the subject from any corner that is not important in the picture. For example, right now, Because the grass is kind of in the foreground, I want to darken this area because I want the cow to be the subject. And therefore, if this part is darker, so we create a filter like so, and then we decrease the exposure, the cow, as you can see, pops up much more than without the filter. At the same time, you can do the same thing on different corner if you wish, or you can just leave it like here. Despite I really like the graduated filter, my absolute favorite is the radial filter, which is exactly the same thing, but this is radial instead of being a line basically. So you can draw a radial filter by clicking and dragging. There you go. And then as before, this will be affected by the preset that we put before and can be changed dynamically afterwards. There you go. The concepts are exactly the same as the graduated filter, with the exception that is radial. You can move and increase, rotate like so. For example, it's like this, and then you drag the outer part and then you rotate it. Even here you can click O and then the selected part will be shown in red, or you can deselect and select here. Then you can create a new one, or you can cancel, for example, some part of the filter. If I go in brush here and then I go down, click erase, can maybe increase the size. There you go, maybe decrease the size if I don't want to affect the cow. I'm just gonna paint on top of the cow. There you go. So all the area that is affected is basically all this red part except the cow. If I want to be more precise, I can even zoom in and delete from the legs, from her chest. There you go. This is it. You can make it even much smaller and done. This will reset the entire filter. Just click on effects and this will reset the entire filter by the exception of what you have canceled before. In this case, if you move the filter, only the area that you canceled before will not be affected. So if I painted with the brush over the cow, this will remain, while if I move the filter, it's not affecting the filter itself. But if I create a new filter, this will affect even the part that I canceled before in the brush earlier. Why do I say that the radial filter is my most favorite tool? Is because in every picture I basically use even 15, 20 or 30 radial filters every single time. Because in some part of the image you can just increase the brightness, in some part of the image you can decrease the brightness, and in some part of the image you want to decrease the saturation. In other parts of the image maybe you want to increase the clarity, or in other part of the image you want to change the color a little bit of the grass. Just to know, I'm saying random, but just to say that every radial filter can have its own properties. So it's not only about lighting, it's not only about colors, but it could be about sharpness, texture, clarity, certain kind of effect, for example creating sun rays or creating sun reflections and all these kind of things. Keep in mind that this last slider here, feather, increases or decreases of course the feather of the filter. Sometimes you need to use the feather 100, sometimes you need to use it 50, and sometimes you need to use it 0, depending on the effect that you want to create. One of the perks of using radial filters is that whenever you select a filter, you create a new one, you can invert the filter. And this will determine whether the internal part of the external part will be affected. There you go. So for example, if we want to create a radial filter that creates a vignette effect, I put it in the middle, decrease the exposure, and invert. So basically all this part, as you can see, all this part is affected, but the center is not really affected. If I want to decrease the feather and create a very strong vignetting, there you go. So remember that you can use the eraser at any time. So you need to select a filter, you go in brush, erase. If you want to select this part, then you can just delete it, there you go. And then basically the circle will be just on top. Now, if I want to increase the flow, I can, so I can make it easier, take less time, and there you go. Many times I use 2 radial filters to do the exact same thing. For example, I create one filter on the car, here, like so, to increase a tiny bit the exposure, okay, and then increase the sharpness. And then I pick another filter on top of the same one, and then decrease the exposure, inverting it, and then decrease the texture, the clarity, and the sharpness. So the result when we increase the exposure of the overall image is like so, and there is a huge difference. As you can see, the houses there are even more blurred, while the car is even more in focus because I increase a tiny bit the sharpness right here. In these other examples, I want to show you how to use the exact same concept but on a portrait. So in this face, we can create a radial filter that is affecting the face only to increase the sharpness and maybe the exposure a tiny bit. There you go. And then because the face, we can decrease the texture a tiny bit so the skin will look smoother. And then we can create a new filter, draw on the same spot, and then decrease the exposure, but we need to invert the filter. So I will draw the attention here, and then if we want, we can decrease the sharpness and decrease the clarity as well of everything that is around. So in this case, before and after, what happens here, the face is much more in focus than before because we decrease the texture and the exposure around. So here we can enhance the depth of the image and focus the attention to the face of the subject. The possibilities using this tool are limitless, and in the various examples at the end of this lesson, I will show you how you can use these filters in a very practical way in various situations. As always with the other panels, when you have a filter selected, you can go below and click on these two rectangles to deactivate all the radial filters that you have on the picture. So everything else will stay the same, but this will toggle and activate or deactivate the radial filters. The last local adjustments that we have is a brush, which is basically the exactly same thing than the other two, but the difference is that you are going to paint and you're going to decide autonomously which part of the photo you want to affect. So in this case, let me affect just everything that is around his face. There you go. Now, why is increasing the exposure is because here I set at the beginning higher exposure, and if you want, you can just decrease dynamically everything that you're painting so you see what you're painting, and then if you want to see what you're painting, you can also click O to show the red area that is being affected. Even here, we have the possibilities to customize our brushes. So we have two types of brushes, A and B, which are two custom brushes that you can put whatever you want. And then, of course, we have the eraser. So whenever you paint something that you want to eliminate, you can go to erase and then delete this part, always adjusting the flow, feather, and size. And even here, for example, now it's too dark, but I can darken a little bit this area. There you go. And then you can decrease the sharpness, decrease the texture and the clarity. Yeah, nice. So you can draw the attention more towards the subject. Another super cool feature that we have when using the brushes is the auto mask. Whenever you start, you're saying, okay, please, when I start, select everything that has the same color of the thing that I selected. So right now, if I do this, let's click O so we see what we're painting, increase the flow and the feather as well, the size, okay. So when we do this, as you can see, what he's selecting is only the sky. He's not selecting the clouds. And this is because the clouds are white while the sky is blue. And when I started from the blue. This is really, really cool and is super useful when we need to select buildings or when we need to select hard patterns and more. Okay, let me do another example just to show you this. So we go in brush, we select new, and then we go to auto mask, and then we start here on the sky. Let's zoom in the picture so you can see that the part affected. Click O to show the part that is affected. There you go. He's not going, even if my brush is going on the building, on the Firenze's Duomo, then the auto mask is doing a pretty good job in selecting only the sky and not the building itself. So if we go into it, you can see that the building is not being affected. Even if my brush is on top of the building, this is because of auto mask. Even using the brush right here is exactly the same as using the other filter, so you can use the hue slider if you want to change the color of your adjustment. Okay, here is a little bit too bright. So look what happens. Yeah, there you go. You can see this area that is selected that changes color, increase, decrease saturation, everything. And you can use also the range mask. So if you want to give it another help and select only the colors that you want to be affecting. So here, there you go. This is another help, and you can use this to do whatever you want, basically. Okay, so now let's go and try to understand in a practical way how we can use these filters in real photos. The first photo that I want to show you is this black background photo, and we can use the spot removal to remove this, which was the light that I used before. There you go, very nicely done. Done, gone, done, perfect. So now the black background is perfect. We're going to crop the image like so. There you go. So respecting the rule of thirds, my eyes are on the top line of the grid. Very nice. Let me show you this eye trick. Every time that I have a portrait, I always do this. I pick a radial filter, draw on top of the eye. Maybe you want to zoom in so you can check exactly where you're putting on top of the eye. There you go. You want to increase a tiny bit the feather in this case, yes. And what I do is I increase the exposure a tiny bit, I increase the clarity a tiny bit, and I increase the sharpness a tiny bit. Then you go on the filter, you tap right click on your mouse, duplicate, and then you're moving to the other side. There you go. And here we can even increase, yeah, even more. Nice. And then in this case, what you can do is you increase the brightness of the face and decrease the texture just a tiny bit like so, and decrease the texture. Yeah, so when we decrease the texture, the skin will look smoother. There you go. And if you want to decrease even more the skin, I just want to select this part. We double click on effect to reset all the values that we assigned, and then we decrease the texture like so. And then because I don't want my eyes and I don't want my lips to be affected, I can go in range mask, color, color picker, click and drag just on the skin. So in this case, because my lips are not the same as skin and my eye is not the same color as the skin, then they won't be affected. There you go. Before and after looks already so much better. Now we can also increase a tiny bit, maybe the overall. We can increase the contrast, and there you go. This is a finished picture. Another trick that we can do is whitening the teeth. So what you want to do is you zoom in the teeth, you take a radial filter or even a brush. You can use both. You paint on the teeth. There you go. Okay. Now, this exposure is way too much, so you just increase it a tiny bit, and then you decrease the saturation so it's not yellow anymore. Eventually you can even touch the temperature if needed. I think it's still too much exposure. There you go. And then you go in range mask, pick color, color picker, and then you basically drag on teeth. Nice. As you've seen, it's not affecting anymore this part and the lips around. There you go. Before and after. Much better, right? Another trick that you can use is creating light rays. So you need to use a radial filter, then you draw something like so, yeah, to simulate, and then you want to increase the feather slightly more. There you go. Yeah, and eventually, if you want to increase them, you can duplicate to create that kind of effect. Okay. That looks good. Eventually, if you want, you can even increase the temperature and put it orange, so it's a reflection that is coming from the right, and it looks pretty good. You can also create a sun effect. So what you do is you take a radial filter and then you draw a big sun right here, increase the exposure, and then make it yellow. There you go. Super easy. Looks great. Eventually, you can even change the color of your hair. So you take a brush, auto mask, and then we paint on top of the ears. Yeah, like so. There you go. Now let's zoom in. just to give you an example. And then if you want to do these things, of course, you need to be as precise as possible. And then because these areas are selected, then you can move this slider and you can change the color of the pictures. Now, I did it very fast. You can be much more careful selecting all the airs. You need to be patient, of course, but you got the concept. Using the same concept, you can change the color of anything that you want in the picture. So even here, if you want to select all the sky, you select, you do your own selection, you're patient doing these things, and then you change, dragging the hue from one side to the other. So whether you have a jacket, whether you have anything in your hands that you want to change the color of, easy. One more thing that you can do using the local adjustments are also darkening the background and eventually whitening the background. So we use a radial filter in this case, and then we do a big one, we decrease the exposure quite a lot, and then we go on range mask and tell luminance, and then we basically decrease the highlights as the feet are more like highlights or midtones. If this didn't work as much, then you can go do the same thing using radial filters, or even better, brushes, using maybe auto mask if you want. You do that, yeah, nice, 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 there you go, and then decrease the exposure a lot. Boom, looks like super black now. How cool is this, right? One more thing that you can do eventually is to create a contrast between yellow and blue using kind of sun effect. So you take a radial filter, you draw a big effect here, decrease the exposure, maybe increase just a tiny bit, then make it yellow, like the sun is coming this way. And then at the same time, you can create a new one, and then this way, where is the shadow already, you can decrease the exposure and then make it blue. So as you can see, you understand that the sun is coming this way, and then eventually you can even create a sun and then some sun rays, and then you can decrease the exposure here, double tap on effect to reset it, decrease the exposure, and there you go. This is already looking better, and then you're just gonna tweak the colors and make it even more pleasing for your eyes. Another way that you can use radial filters are to smoothen the water. So you go in radial filter, you draw a huge radial filter here on the water, you reset all the effect, and then you decrease the clarity all the way and decrease the texture also all the way, maybe also the sharpness. So here the water is much smoother than before, and then your eyes automatically recognize this as a subject, and it helps a lot doing this. One more thing that you can do with radial filters is that you can basically turn on some lights within building and enhance some details. For example, right now in this church, we can basically turn on like there was a light within. There you go. We take the windows, we do some radial filters, duplicate, boom. And as you can see, this gives so much more depth to the picture. Highly suggest doing this. And eventually you can take another one to put on the church. There you go. Reset all the effects and then increase the exposure. Yes, and then we can increase the clarity on the church to make it more punchy. How cool is this, right? Huge difference. So eventually you can even create and use radial filters or brush filters or brushes to create more contrast in a picture. So for example here, because there's a sky on top, we can enhance the color of the sky, increasing the blue tones right there. And then we duplicate this below, but here we just need to put more yellow and orange. Yeah, there you go. Eventually we can decrease this part so there is more contrast. Very nice. And if you want, you can also create a dreamy effect by simply dragging down the texture. Yeah, there you go. Before and after. Much better, and I haven't done anything basically on colors and light adjustments, so we can increase the looking of this picture even further very easily. We can use a graduated filter to decrease the exposure in this area, so the attention is to the skateboarder, not anymore on this part. You can even do more, like so. Yeah, there you go. You always want to darken the area that is before your subject. So this way, your eyes will go directly to the subject and won't wait to see the first part here in the foreground. That's it for the local adjustments for now. We're gonna have a look at more example later when we put everything together. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Now we're going through the last part of editing our pictures. In the top details, so we just need to scroll down until we find the top details. We can choose whether to increase the sharpening of the entire image or not. My suggestion is to never increase the sharpening to the whole pic. Instead, use local adjustments to enhance only part of the image, as we've seen in the previous section. So here in this box, you can see basically your image zoomed in, so you can see the difference between sharpening before and after. There you go. And then there is the noise reduction, a very heavy tool. So if you have a slow computer, be careful and use this at the very end, just right before exporting. Okay, for using the noise reduction, you basically want to, let me show you how it works. You can pick whether to affect the luminance of or the colors. And as you can see, there is an effect in this, and then you want to make sure that the photo won't look too bad when you're using it. So be really careful when you're using this tool, and you can eventually even affect the colors based on your photo. Okay, now we move to the Effect tab, where you can increase the vignetting and its parameters. I really love the vignette as it helps drawing the attention towards the center of the image. But be careful, as usually beginners tend to overuse this function, especially when you're shooting outdoor. If you don't manage it well, you might create pictures that will look like fake. For example, let's take a look at this picture, right? We understand that the sun is coming from the right, but then if we overuse the vignette effect, this will look pretty bad. And even though we can increase or decrease the midpoint, this simply doesn't look good. Instead, we could use radial filters or graduated filters to create part of the vignette, like so, like one here, a tiny bit. There you go. So this is another option that you can use. Indeed, if you have these kind of photos where the subject is really in the middle, vignette will look good if used properly. So there you go. Here we'll draw the attention to the dog, and looks already so much better, right? Because your eyes go directly to the dog. When we use vignetting, we can move towards the right to make it white, or towards the left to make it black, and then we can use the midpoint to increase or decrease the vignetting towards the center and the roundness. So if we want to square, let me show you. There you go, this is square because the roundness is -100, or we can make it basically a circle by moving this towards +100. Then you can increase the feather, so make it extremely sharp like so, or increase the feather, so basically you don't see it. And then we have the last one, which is grain, which creates a kind of vintage effect, and even here you can increase or decrease the size of the grain and the roughness. So here it's extremely rough, extremely big, or you can decrease, and then there you go. Here you can see it better. You can increase the size of the grain, increase the amount, or increase the amount. You use the grain when you want to create a kind of vintage effect. Okay, this is the last part of the editing process, kind of managing these details. In the next video, we're going to have a look at the main shortcuts that will speed up your process in Lightroom. Thanks for watching. In this video, I want to summarize all the main shortcuts that you can use to speed up your workflow inside Lightroom. I'll leave down in the description or in the research section a link to the Adobe website where you can download a PDF with all the main shortcuts. Now, some of them you've seen them before, but I just want to summarize them so you can just look at this video once upon a time when you want to implement more shortcuts with a time. Keep in mind that whenever I'm going to mention command, because I'm on a Mac, if you have a Windows, you just need to translate it into control. The first one and foremost and most important is zooming in and zooming out, and you need to use Command plus or Command minus to zoom in and zoom out. Or if you have a trackpad, you can pinch in and pinch out on the trackpad. So here in Lightroom, you just need to go in a picture and click Command plus to zoom in and Command minus to zoom out. If you have a trackpad, you do the same thing, pinch in and pinch out. 1 to 5 will set the stars, the rating of every picture. And you can do the same thing while you are in library. You can click 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, or even 0, or even 3 to make the rating that you want. When you are in the develop or library mode, you can click P to flag the picture. Now you see the little flag here, or if you go in library, you can also see the flag right there. X to set as rejected, and the flag will turn into a rejected photo. And you can see it, of course, even in the develop mode. Right there is a black flag. Now classic, whenever you do any kind of editing, like in every software, you can just click on Command Z to go to the previous action. If you have made any adjustments to the picture, let's say like this, and then vibrance, you can click Command C to copy all the settings, and you can select or deselect any of those. Then you can copy, then you go in the next picture, of course, Command V, and it will copy all the settings. Now let's say you have a series of photos, and then you edit one, and then you can copy in the next photo all the previous adjustments that you've made on a picture. You just tap the right button, and this would be past settings from previous. There you go, and it copies directly from the previous photo that you've selected. For example, in this photo, I make some adjustments, okay, whatever it is, and then I want to jump into this one. I just need to click paste from previous, and then it will take directly the settings from this picture to this picture without clicking copy and paste. Now the keyboard 6 onwards are dedicated to the colors. 6 is red, 7 is yellow, 8 is green, so on. Whenever you click Q, it accesses directly the spot removal, where you can then go and select whatever you want to modify, then increase or decrease the size and the feather or the opacity of the spot removal. Even here, if you have a trackpad, instead of clicking the size with the slider, you can just drag up or drag down 2 fingers to make it smaller or bigger. Next one is M, and this accesses the graduated filter. And then after you've clicked M, you can just go and drag your mouse or trackpad to create a graduated filter. If we click R, is the crop tool, and then if you click O, we can modify the grid and choose the one that we're looking for. Okay, let's leave the rule of thirds right now. And then you can just drag the mouse and draw the part that you want to cut, like so. If you click Shift and M, this will access the radial filter. Then you can just draw it. There you go. K is the brush. Same thing, another local adjustment, and then you have it. Backslash is to see the before and after. Okay, let me do some adjustments first. There you go, just to have a look. You see the before, backslash, and after. And even here, you see when is before is selected. If you click Tab, you see the image only without the adjustments on the right and without the left tabs. Tab to go back again. If you want to reset a slider, for example, all these effects, you just double click on Effect right there, and then it resets them all. If you want to reset all these adjustments and even the one below, which is the function that does this button right here, you just need to click Command, Shift, and R, and everything will be reset to normal. Okay, these are the main shortcuts that I use all the time and that will really speed up your workflow. So try to learn as many as possible with the time. Although it's very difficult to remember them all, try to watch back this video and maybe take notes and implement as many as you can with the time. Okay, I'll see you in the next video where we're going to talk about presets. Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk about presets. Presets are a set of colors and settings that you can save and you can download maybe from the internet from other creators, and then you can apply to your own pictures. Okay, so for example, let's do a random edit. Okay, literally I'm doing it random just for the sake of understanding. There you go, curve here, yellow, whatever. Then we increase the vignetting, make it white. So let's say you want to save for the future this edit. On the left-hand side, you can see the tab presets, and then you just need to go on plus, create presets, and then you give it a name, preset 1, try, and then you can select or deselect all the adjustments that you made if you want or not included in the preset, and then you can check them all or check none to make it faster. Let's say like this. Here you have the group. So for example, if you want to create a new group and call it portrait presets, then you can do so. I'm just going to leave here in the users presets. Now you click create, and then here in the tab presets you can see user presets, and then if I go and scroll down, there you go, there is a preset try. So I can reset this picture and then apply this presets, which is exactly the same. And then if I go to another picture, let's say this one, I can go here in the left and click preset 1 try, and we'll apply all the settings that we've set in the previous photo. As you can see here, I created already around 30 of my own presets that I can use to start editing the picture already with some basic settings. This can be useful when you need to match your Instagram feed or create a client work that will have the same colors and stuff like this. However, I really enjoy the process of editing each single picture. So usually what I do when I shoot a new project, I start editing one single picture and then do the copy from previous as I showed you before, or just copy and paste the settings. Keep in mind that every photo is different based on the camera that you're using, the lens that you're using, and the weather condition that you are, the lighting condition. So if in the previous photo the gray mood was looking great, maybe in this photo won't look as good as before. In fact, it's not really great. Now you can still adjust the preset, so whenever you apply a preset, you can go and modify whatever you want within the picture, and the presets won't be saved. If you want to update your presets, then you need to create a new one after you've made your adjustments. Now, when you purchase presets back on the web, or you can download from a friend, or you can create your own, whatever you want, you can always click here and then import presets, and then you can go in the downloaded folder from the creator you purchased the preset with, and then it's very simple. You just need to click on a zip file that they will provide you, click import, and then you're good to go. You're gonna see them in a new folder in this tab. As you can see, they're really useful to speed up your workflow when you need to edit a certain type of images with the same colors, with the same settings. However, you need to be careful and adjust them picture by picture every time because of the different settings. I'll see you in the next video where we're gonna have a look at loads of examples to apply everything that we've learned so far. Thanks for watching. Ciao. We've learned a lot of Lightroom features, but how can you apply all of this together? How you can modify a picture from A to Z? In this video, I will show you loads of examples on my editing process. And for me, it's probably the most interesting videos, as you really see how you can apply all of these features in one picture. These examples will range from food to architecture to landscape to people, so you can really have a practical taste on how you can approach your photos from A to Z. Okay, let's dig into it. Okay, let's start from this photo. The first thing that I want to do is to adjust the angle. I'm going to do this. There you go. Just the cropping. So make sure that this is in the center. Yeah, like so. I'm watching these 2 points, that they are the same. There you go. And let's have a look if this is in the center. Not yet. Okay, there you go. That looks okay. Now, it was not shot perfectly. In fact, I'm not perfectly in the middle, but that's fine. It's not a problem. Now, the first thing that I want to do is to decrease the exposure to bring back the highlights. Okay, like so. And then we see increasing the shadows. Actually, no, I want to keep it dramatic, so we'll keep the shadows down. But then I want to use a radial filter to increase a little bit the exposure on myself and on the cathedral. Let's see. Yeah, this is good. Very nice. Then I want a graduate filter to darken even more this part. Double click on effect to reset all, and then decrease. Yes, that sounds good. Now let's go into colors. Oh, this was the turn curve already here, probably shown from before. That's fine. Now let's go in colors. We go into blue, then we modify a tiny bit. There you go. Let's have a look. Nice. Even we go into yellow. Yeah, more like a sunset pinky vibes. That's good. And then one thing that I want to do is to create a radial filter on this side and create kind of a sun reflection. So double click to reset all. Increase the exposure like so, and then temperature towards the yellow. Yeah, like it was a reflection of the sun. And then what I do is I duplicate the same filter on the other side, but then here I want to change it and go towards the blue and decrease maybe the exposure. Yeah, like so. And this was the before and after. So much better already, right? If I want, I can even decrease the clarity. There you go. Maybe do another radial filter in this part. Yes, raise it and increase the clarity just right there. And increase here the feather. Okay, I like this picture a lot. Before and after. Now let's have a look at the people. First thing that I want to do is to check the skin. So I want to try to remove at least the biggest pimples here. So I go in spot removal, much smaller, like so. Okay, click, nice, 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 nice. Now you can keep going, just I don't want to waste too much time. Let's just go on the other part, Q. Yep, gone, it's perfect, all done. Can remove this. Okay, yeah, there you go. Then the next thing that I want to do is to increase the sharpness of the eyes. Yep, there you go. Increase a little bit of the exposure, a little bit of the clarity and the sharpness. Then copy and paste this on the other side. Yep, and then do this with the other person. Like so. Yep, can even decrease here. Make sure to don't do it too much. Otherwise, for example, if I leave it in the white and I bump up the exposure too much, that will look fake. So the eyes will look like a zombie. Okay, and I decrease it. Okay, nice. The next thing that I want to do is to decrease the texture in their face. Reset the effects and decrease the texture. This will allow to smoothen the skin a little bit. This before, this is the after, just a tiny bit. And then if I want to make it even more precise, I can take this one, go in range mask, then pick the color and choose their face color. So this won't affect their eye or the lips. Nice. Now let's play around with the colors. I want to increase a little bit the contrast, like so, decrease the texture overall. Nice. And then maybe a graduated filter to make these parts slightly darker. So we'll put in focus their faces. Yeah, there you go. Nicely done. Let's have a look at the colors. Here that there is the purple. If I want to change the purple, I can go here, magenta or purple directly. And then as you can see, you can directly change the color. So I like it blue because it seems to help her eyes to pop up. And there you go. This for me is a finished picture, before and after. Now let's have a look at this picture, and here as you can see is not really perfect because here he's not in focus and this part doesn't look good and there are a lot of imperfections. This picture as it was shot in like a second. So what I would like to do here is go black and white. Yeah, this is much better already. Then I create a radial filter, put it here. Yes, it's nice. So I can remove that halo right there just by increasing the exposure like so. Yeah, that's really nice. And then I want to increase the sharpness in his face but decrease the texture like so, and then increase the sharpness. Very nice. Yeah, eventually if he has any big pimples we can remove them, but I think he's okay. Then eventually you can make slightly darker or even increase the exposure here or decrease. Let's see which one is the best. No, it's better to increase it. Yeah, there you go. Okay, and then what we can do is let's try to create another radial filter, much bigger, and then just select the range mask with the luminance that will affect only the very highlights. There you go. So let's try to do it on the other side as well. so we can create that kind of cool white background effect. Yeah, that looks good. Let's see. Nice. Eventually, because this area is affecting only this corner, we can take the brush and paint over here, so we'll have the same effect than this radial filter. Here in radial filter, you need to select that filter, you go in brush, and then we paint over here. Yes, there you go. Much better. This is the before, this is the after. What a difference. Okay, let's have a look at this picture right now. As you can see, the horizon is not straight. Absolutely keep it straight every single time. So we go in angle here, and we try to modify either by eye or by using the ruler, like so. Yeah, that was perfect. Now we try to select the rule of thirds in a perfect way. So 1/3 is the sky, 1/3 is the center, and 1/3 is the grass. There you go. Now we decrease the temperature like so, increase the exposure, contrast a tiny bit, decrease the highlights. So we're taking back some burnt highlights over here. Maybe increase a tiny bit the shadow, decrease the clarity and texture. There you go. Then maybe I want to create an S curve right here. So we do 3 points, a little bit up the highlights and a little bit down the shadows. Yeah, so increase that contrast, very nice. Now we go into hue. The first thing that I want to adjust are the blues, like so. Yes, very nice. And then we go into yellows, which is probably affecting also the green because the grass is slightly yellow as well. Yeah, there you go. And then the greens, we bring them towards the yellow as I like. Very good. Now I would like to touch the oranges, but if I touch the oranges, this will affect also my face. As you can see, look at my face over there. So we can't really touch this, but we can increase a little bit of saturation over here. Okay, and then we click Q, and then eventually you can move away all these people. Now I'm not going to do it. Yeah, oh, there was there already. Now you can be as precise as you want and take as much time as you want, but just because of the limited amount of time, I'm not going to do them all. Yes, there you go. Okay, and then you can go ahead and remove basically every single person here. Now, using Photoshop, this thing will be much easier than Lightroom, and maybe using Lightroom, this area, for example, will be very difficult to remove. So using Photoshop will be better, and even removing this takes a lot of time. So I'm just gonna edit the colors right here. We apply a graduated filter, reset the filter, and then drag down the exposure. Yes, like so. And then we take a brush and we paint over me. Yeah, like so, very nice. Then we reset the effect and increase the exposure a tiny bit, decreasing the highlights, otherwise my t-shirt will burn because it's white. Okay, so let's simulate a sun coming from this side. We drag a big radial filter, like so. We increase the feather maximum, yeah. Then reset all the parameters, and then increase the exposure and the temperature on this side. So it seems like a sunset and a sun that is coming towards this way. Now, if you want, you can even create kind of a reflection coming from this way. Then you reset, you create this huge filter, and then you increase the exposure. Boom, like so, only in this area. Remember to, in this case, we want the feather to be at maximum, so you don't see the difference between like the not affected part and the affected part. There you go, before and after. If you want, we can also increase with another radial filter, kind of the clarity here to make it pop a little bit more, but this is not necessary. It's totally up to you. So you can see this creates depth in the picture because the main layer, main subject is here, but then we can also increase the clarity to create a little bit more focus. Not too much, don't go crazy with the clarity. This is super important. Before and after. In this case, there's not much that you can do. So if you adjust the angle, then the photo will be cut out a little bit. So you can leave it like so. And despite the composition is not perfect, I just want to show you how you can edit this picture to make it look good. So I'm going to increase the exposure, yeah, like so. And then we go directly into the colors. Let's see what happens when we modify this. Okay, let's leave it like so. Then here we want to adjust the reds. Yeah, I like it over there. Then let's see what happens with the magenta and the purple. Okay, nice. And the oranges. Here there are no people, so we can touch the oranges with no problem. Yeah, you see the difference, right? Looking so good now. Yes, that's it. This is the before and this is the after. Now what we can do is we decrease the highlights to bring back a little bit of details, and eventually we can use gradient filter here to make it slightly darker. And if you want, we can take a brush, paint over this eye to make it pop even here. Okay, reset the effects, and then increase tiny bit the exposure like so. Decrease the texture and the clarity to make it more dreamy, but increase the contrast. There you go. Even this part, I'm not a big fan of this part, so we decrease the exposure if we want to move the focus of our eyes. And this is really looking pretty good, much better than before. Eventually you can even drag another radial filter on the ICC on this building and see how you can move it. Yeah, even adjusting the temperature is looking pretty good. Yeah, it looks great. I really like it. Before and after, huge difference, right? Now let's have a look at this example. Here we can drag up the exposure a tiny bit, and then we can adjust already the colors, the yellows, bring them towards the orange. So what I want to try here is create this teal and orange effect. So the blue, we move them towards the teal. There you go. Okay, nicely done. And then I want to create a radial filter to increase the effect of this little lamp by dragging up the exposure and dragging down the texture. Nice, very good. And then maybe we can move the temperature a little bit so it's more orangey. And then I want to increase also the effect of this window. So what I want to do here is to create a radial filter, maximum feather, range mask, luminance, and affect only the highlights. There you go. Very nice. This is the before, this is the after. Next one, let's see how we can modify this burger. Here the colors are good. We can increase the contrast and simulate kind of a brighter side on the right. There you go. Yes, nice. And maybe we can put it towards the yellow, and then we can create a new one on this side to create contrast and more blue. Yeah, nice. Now I want to darken this area as there was a kind of a shadow. So we reset the effects, then we decrease the exposure like so. Yes, very nice. Now I want to create a radial filter on the burger, as the burger is our subject. Let's see right there. Okay, and then we can increase the exposure a tiny bit and increase the sharpness a tiny bit. And then I want to create another radial filter, but this time we want to invert it. So we can decrease the exposure. Nice. Yeah, I like it. And then we take the other one and increase again the exposure. Yeah, this looks good already. Before and after. Huge difference. And then let's see what we can do here. Maybe we can create an S curve on the blue tone curve. In this case, we are increasing the blue in the highlights and decreasing the blue in the shadows. Okay, before, after. Here, if we want to let the ketchup and the tomatoes pop up more, we can decrease the hue and maybe increase the saturation a tiny bit and play around with the luminance. That will affect only the tomatoes and the ketchup within the burger. Now here is really up to you, but you can even touch the tint and see where you like it more. I think original is my favorite, and eventually if you wanted to create like a graphic on the right, then you can crop it and keep the burger just on the left hand of the picture of the crop, and here you can put, for example, the logo, before and after. Let's see an example with the couple. Here we can increase the contrast, and I want to go directly into the colors, drag the hue towards the teal, drag down the saturation, play around with the luminance, maybe down, even less saturation. Yeah, like so, very nice. The sun is coming towards the left, so we can create the sun effect coming towards the right from the left. There you go. Then we can play with the turn curve and drag up the blacks. So from here, you drag it up. Yeah, very nice. Then I would decrease the orange saturation just because we feel we are too orange. Nice. Decrease the highlights here, tiny bit, yes. Decrease the shadows, there you go. We can decrease or increase the clarity based on what we like. If we like it more punchy, we increase the clarity. If we like it more dreamy effect, then we decrease the clarity. Be careful to don't overuse it. Then the vibrance we can increase a tiny bit. Now gradient filter on the bottom to darken that area. There you go. This is looking already pretty good. Before and after, not bad. In this next example, I want to show you how we can combine kind of a landscape and a family photo. So here we start with the cropping. Now, if we want to post this one on Instagram, for example, we can choose 4:5 and then we adapt the composition to it. So in this case, I'm going to put the subject in between the crossing line of the rule of thirds, and then everything else looks good. Okay, the first thing that I want to do is to darken this part because it's not necessary. So we reset all the effects, then we darken it. There you go. Okay, then maybe we increase the exposure. Very nice. And then decrease the highlights a little bit right there. Decrease the texture and the clarity. There you go. Then we want to increase kind of a sun effect coming from this way. So we increase the exposure and the temperature. Yeah, nice. And we play around with the temperature of the picture itself, and then eventually you can create another radial filter in this way to make it eventually darker and more cold. So you create the contrast between the cold and the orange. Now here you want to create an S curve in the turn. Very nice. And then we create a radial filter on the subjects right there. Increase the feather maximum and then increase the exposure just a tiny bit. There you go. And as you can see, the difference is already quite big from before and after. But then let's play around with the color. So we go into blue, then we edit, nice saturation, there you go. So here the mountains, there are a lot of orange, but if we want to touch the orange, we need to go and use radial filters instead of the color sliders, otherwise even our skin will be affected. So in this case, if we want, you can adjust the colors of the mountains based on your liking. Okay, I like it more kind of pinky, and then I drag down the saturation, and there you go. Now to create another sun ray, eventually I can use a brush make it bigger, and then paint it towards this side like so. Yeah, there you go. Don't worry if the exposure is crazy. It's because the effect preset is like this, but you don't have to do that. We can just increase. Yeah, that's it. So you see the affected area by clicking O, and this is it. Now the auto mask was on. So basically, because I started from the mountains, it's taking only the mountains and it's not taking, for example, this part right here. Okay, this looks pretty good. I like it. Before and after. Because there is a lot of texture here due to the mountain and the rocks, you can drag a radial filter on the family, on the subject, invert it, decrease the texture. There you go, and clicking O, you can see that it's much better. I like it much more. Before and after. If we have a look at the radial filters, we can disable them and see the difference that they create. As you can see, creates much more depth the fact that we created a highlight point here on the family and also some sun rays coming this way. Next example, we have this car, as we've seen also before. We already created the two radial filters, one that is decreasing the texture around and one that is increasing the sharpness in the car. Now let me show you how you can turn on car lights. So you drag the brush and then you paint in front of the car like so, and you do the same thing on the other side like so. Yeah, and even here we can maybe do this. Yep, very good. And then what you want to do is you simply increase the exposure to create that reflection. And then if you want to turn them on properly, we go in radial filter very close to the car, and then we create two different radial filters, one that is slightly bigger like so, and increase the feather in this one, and then you create a new one by going here and then exactly the same position but closer to the light itself, much brighter. There you go. And now we do the same thing with the second light over here, and then even the second one over here. Yeah, like so. And then if you want, you can do it on the other side. If you like to increase more the brush of the reflection, you can increase them, you see, and then on. So you can cancel, erase this part right here because under the car is not really a good fit. So we can erase, there you go, this part right here. Nice. Very nice. And even this part, maybe a tiny bit. Good, 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 good. Yeah, there you go. Now it looks like real. You can increase or decrease the highlights based on how you like. Good, right? And eventually, if you like it even more, you can create another one, another brush, and you can play around with it. There you go, before and after. Now be just careful at these points that they might look fake. So eventually you can even remove these by dragging the spot removal into the mouse. And this is the final effect, before and after. Eventually we can go and tweak the colors a tiny bit. So let's see, we can also change the color of the car if you wish by changing the yellow. Or eventually what you can do is you can drag another radial filter only on the car. Let's reset the filter, there you go. And then let's change the color like so. Nice. And then in the range mask, you select the colors, color picker, and then select part of the image. If you want to select even more because it's not selected all, you can press shift and do another part of the car. There you go, here. Nice. 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 Okay, and then you can literally change the color of the car. Pretty cool, isn't it? And then eventually we can bring the shadows towards the blue. Yeah, like so, and the highlights towards the orange. Nice, very good. Create a little sun effect is coming this way, not too much. Increase exposure, increase the yellow, yeah. And this is it. I like it a lot. Eventually you can even put some vignetting. You go down in effect amount, you drag it to the left to make it darker, and then the midpoint to center it a little bit more. There you go. Pretty cool, huh? Now let's try to edit this BMX photo and see what we can do. You can drag the temperature towards more warm colors. We can drag the exposure down. Let's make it a dramatic effect. Let's go in blues. Yeah, I like it much better already. Nice, very good. Graduated filter, so we darken this area. I don't want it to distract the focus of the BMX rider. There you go, very nice. And then eventually you can create, the sun is coming from here, okay. Then we take the range mask, luminance, range, just the highlights. Yes, nice. And then you can drag it towards the yellow. Very nice. Let's see what happens. Yeah, very good. Okay, and then you can increase or decrease the exposure whether you want to see the rider or just see his silhouette. In this case, I just want to see the silhouette, so I'm just gonna drag it right there. Then you can decrease the texture a tiny bit and maybe increase the clarity this time, so we want to make it very punchy. And then if we don't like the black to be very black, then we can increase the black point here. Nice. And then let's play around with the blue curve. Yeah. Yeah, very nice. Good. This is before, and this is after. Much better, right? Eventually in this photo you can even play around with the calibration, and I want to touch a little bit the blue primary. There you go. Saturation a tiny bit down, and this is the final result. It's about the effect that you want to create. It's very subjective. Now we can also modify this picture in a very similar way that we did before. Go here, and then we click Ctrl+C. We pick whatever we want. Let's pick all of them, check all, copy. We go in the next photo, Command V, and this will be adjusted. And it looks pretty great, isn't it? Also the sun looks great, wow. And even here there's no sun, but if you want, you can leave it right there, and this will create a very nice effect. I really like this. Yeah. Looking great, right? Already, without even touching it, just copy and pasting from another picture. So here I want to adjust the horizon. So I'm here in the crop tool, and like this looks great. Okay, so I want to already touch the colors and use it a bit towards this way, and then I go into green and move it towards the yellow. Yeah, looks already so much better. Very nice. Okay, and then here what I can do is I create different layers by using radial filters. So here in the grass, I want to blur it out even more, and I can decrease the sharpness and eventually decrease the clarity and the texture if I want to make it very blurred. Nice. And then in this part of the mountain, what I can do is to increase the clarity, and this will create even more depth. But don't go too crazy as always with the clarity, just a tiny bit. Very nice. And then here I can increase the exposure and the contrast as well. Very nice. Now, in the overall picture looks pretty dark, so I can increase the shadows or the exposure itself. Yes, very nice. Create a sun effect coming from this way. There you go. Okay, increase the exposure, yes, like so, and the temperature, yes, and then we create another radial filter that acts as a sun ray, let's say. Or is that the effect? Yes, very nice. Make yellow, good job. Now, because this radial filter is affecting even here the mountain, maybe here is just too much. So what I do is I zoom in the picture. There you go. And then I take the brush, click on erase, make it bigger, decrease the flow, and then remove. Yeah, there you go. And then keep painting, keep painting, keep painting. Nice, nice, nice. Maybe I can increase the flow a tiny bit more, and then boom. This looks great. Yeah, before and after. Not bad, right? Eventually, you can also decrease the exposure in this area because it's not affected by the sun. Double click on effects and then decrease the exposure a tiny bit. There you go. Nice. And then if you want, you can even increase the exposure and the clarity in this area. So we take the brush, we paint over. Yeah, like so. Very nice. Reset the effect and increase the clarity. Very nice. There you go. Looking great. Before and after. Let's have a look at the toy just for product photography. As I showed you before, we can darken this area. And then here, what I would do is very simple. Just increase the clarity to make the toy pop up even more, and then increase the vibrance to make the red popping up. And then if you want, you can even change the color of this thread by going here. We change the hue. There you go. And then you can make the color that you want. Now here, eventually what you can do is you can also increase the exposure here in his eyes. It really seems to be alive in that way. So let's try to do this and see what happens. With the auto mask is doing a great job. And then we can increase the exposure and decrease the texture, the clarity, and see what happens. Yeah, nice. It's popping up even more. Eventually, you can also increase the exposure right there, like it was a halo effect. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, seems more alive. I like it. Now I want to show you this photo. First of all, I would like to increase the exposure. One of the things that I see already is that we can make this cap pop. So there you go. And then increase the exposure. Nice. Decrease the highlights, so we're bringing back some details over here, and decrease the texture. Now, because this will be orange, we can increase, yeah, like so, even increase more, so you create this halo effect, and then increase the feather. Nicely done, and you can see already there is a huge difference. Now we can crop the picture to make it better composition. Yes, so this is in the center, and then you can decrease the highlights a tiny, yep, like so. Then this part is a little bit too bright. This was an error that I did while shooting this picture, but we can try to fix it a tiny bit. Otherwise, this will be too much distracting. Now we can take another visual filter, throw it on the lamp, on the body, and then increase the clarity and the sharpness. Yes. There you go. Now, if you don't like the blue that is behind, you can go in color, and because there is only that blue, then you can go in blues and decrease the saturation all the way. And honestly, I like it more like this. This is before, this is after. Such a huge difference, right? Eventually here, it will be great to add a little bit of vignetting as well. Nice, there you go. Wow, this is looking pretty good. Next example, I want to show you a person with a car, and I can see that the sun is coming this way. So first thing that I want to do is here and make this sun popping out like so. More orangey, very nice. Increase the feather and decrease the texture to make more dreamy effect. Yeah, very nice. And then maybe I want to create contrast with this orange with this with the car lights. So I can go and change the color of the blue because these are kind of blues. So maybe, yeah, nice, very good. So if I want to make the car pop a little bit more, can reset the effect and add some clarity to the image, some sharpness and a little bit of exposure right there. Yes, very nice. And then eventually I can decrease the exposure in this part so it doesn't distract the viewer too much. Very nice. And then eventually I can even try to paint here, yeah, to increase a tiny bit the exposure on the person. Yeah, very good. Nice. And this is looking already pretty good before and after. Before, after. Okay, these were a lot of examples of how we can put in practice everything that we've learned so far. Remember that if you have any question or if you're curious on why I use that tool instead of the other, feel free to pop any question in the section down below and I'll make sure to answer them as soon as possible. In the next video, I'll show you how to export your images. Thanks for watching. Ciao. Whenever you're ready to export your photos, the first thing that you can do is to use the filters to pick only, for example, the one with 2 stars. And then you can keep pressing Command or Control to select only the photos that you want, or click Command or Control A to select them all. Now you go in File, we go in Export, and then here will pop up a menu where you can choose different options. You can choose the export location. If you want to put it in a subfolder, Lightroom will create a new folder within your location. For example, here in desktop, and now we can call it Lightroom Export 1, okay? And then we can rename the files based on the rules that you want. And you can also pick the quality and the format. So usually I pick JPG quality maximum. And you can resize the image and pick the resolution in case you want it to print. You can decide to increase all the metadata, and here you can pick the watermark that we have edited before. Eventually you can even edit here in Edit Watermarks. And then these are the options that we've seen before already. When you're ready, you just click Export, and then here you see the bar loading. Once it's finished, you'll be able to see the new folder within the desktop. Let's see, there you go, Lightroom Export 1 with all the photos within. So there's the first one, second one, third one, fourth one, and fifth one. And that's it. After you've exported your photos, you're good to go. And that's it. Now it's time to apply everything that you've learned in your photos. For this class project, I'd like you to take one of your photos and edit it using the tools that we've learned in this class. Now remember to not over-edit your photo. Tiny changes and reiterate every time your adjustments. I'm really excited to see your edits, so feel free to post them down below so I can give you feedback. Now I know that the quantity of information that I give you in this class has been massive, but feel free to watch back any lesson at any time. Remember that when it comes down to edit, it's all about practice and training your brain to see what's the next step. Editing is about revision, trial and error. You need to visualize what you're going to do next. And visualization is just about practice. And this is the end of the class. I really hope you learned something and now you're ready to bring your photos to the next level. Feel free to comment with any question that you have in the section down below. I'd be more than happy to answer to all of those. If you enjoyed the class, I'd really appreciate if you could leave a review. Check out my other classes on Skillshare, subscribe to my newsletter, join my Telegram group, and get in touch on my social media as I post daily content in there. All my useful resources are linked in my teacher profile. I wish you a great day, evening, wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Ciao.